Hello, and welcome back to the Untapped New York podcast. I'm Michelle Young, the founder of Untapped New York and the author of the books Secret Brooklyn, Secret New York, and The Art Spy, about a female resistance hero slash art historian from World War II. Today's podcast is about some breaking news, or at least breaking news in our world. It's also the subject of an article we published this week. I'm joined today by a few members of the Untapped New York team. Nicole Saranero, our editor and director of events, who broke the news, and Justin Rivers, our chief experience officer.
Hello.
Nicole,
Hello.
why don't you take it away with this rather sad news, although I guess we all knew it was coming.
Yeah, it was sad news. We first learned about this last November. The Parks Department announced that they were going to remove a piece of World's Fair history from Flushing Meadows-Corona Parks. In David Dinkins Circle, there were a series of mosaics in the sidewalk that commemorated different attractions from both the 1939 and 1964 World's Fairs. The medallions themselves were not from the World's Fairs. They were installed later in the 90s as a commemorative art installation, but people still enjoyed them and they were a fun nod to the fairs. So we got the warning back in November that they were going to be removed at some point, and sadly this summer is when they were actually removed.
So, Justin, what can you tell us about the significance of these mosaics historically, but also to New Yorkers?
Yeah, the mosaics were a really great way to enter the park because they're at David Dinkins Circle, which was, I think, formerly known as the Passarelle Plaza or Passarelle. It's the base of the Passarelle ramp. So for those people who know Flushing Meadow-Corona Park, when you get off the 7 train, you walk over a very long boardwalk that goes over the train yard, and then you're at the entryway to Flushing Meadow-Corona Park. And there, the medallions were at the base of it, under a very giant mosaic of the Trilon and Perisphere, which were theme center to the 39 and 40 World's Fair. And as Nicole already mentioned, they were put in as sort of a more celebratory restoration and renovation of the park in the 90s when Flushing Meadow-Corona Park was sort of coming out of a rough period of neglect. And they were colorful, they were bright, they were a conversation starter. We have our Remnants of the World's Fair tour, which runs roughly about once a month, and that's where our tour began. And I use them as a means to tell people what the World's Fair were. They depicted scenes from both the fairs, 39 and 40, but mainly 64 and 65. And they were just a great way to get started in your journey of picking apart World's Fair history at the park.
What are some of the comments or emotions that people have had on your tour when they see these mosaics?
Well, when I was giving tours last year, as they were announcing that they were going to be removing them, the mosaics were falling apart. Literally, you could pick up little pieces of the tile. And people were just really upset by it. They said, why would the park do this? Why would they let them just deteriorate like this? Those were good questions. And we didn't have good answers to them. And it really upset the people who were on the tour and people who were entering the park. And now that they're gone, it just feels, to be blunt, it just feels naked over there. And
Right.
our new guests don't know that they were even there, which is even sadder for me.
So, for a long time, there have been mosaics that were already missing, like the medallions themselves were already gone. What medallions still remained, and what have they filled it in with?
Yes. We actually, when we first published our article that they were going to be removed last year, we actually got an email from someone who worked on designing the mosaics. And he was able to send us a plan that he had from the landscape architects who commissioned him to create some of the artwork that the mosaics were based on. And on those plans, there were 11 medallions to start with. So by the time they were removed in the summer, there were only 5.
Okay, and what were those 5? Do we know?
So the biggest one was a depiction of the Fountain of the Planets, which is or was during the World's Fairs the largest fountain in the world. It has been surpassed, I believe, by a fountain in Dubai. And the Fountain of the Planets at night was one of the center attractions of the 64-65 World's Fair from, I think, sundown to about 2 a.m. because the fair closed at 2 a.m., which I thought is pretty cool. for back then. There would be fireworks and a light show and a synchronized music show that went with sort of like dancing water, which was really, for the 60s, really advanced. Um, in 39 and 40, it was the Laguna Nation. So it was a real center point for the park. And it was a really great conversation starter for the tour as well, to talk about, hey, I'm going to take you to this basin and you're going to see, today it's just sort of it is full, but it's not doing anything, mainly full of geese. And, the other really great conversation starter mosaic was the Andy Warhol depicted a Cheshire cat, I like to call it Cheshire cat grin of Robert Moses mural. And the reason why that had happened, and actually when we were speaking to Michael Golden, who Nicole had referenced before, the man who put these mosaics together, he didn't even know the story behind it. But Andy Warhol and Robert Moses came to head over a mural that Andy Warhol put on the side of the New York State Pavilion, which is over on the other side of the park from where the mosaics were. And so for me, I used to say to the tour, see this, who's this guy, and see who knows Robert Moses. It was a really great way to start that conversation, and then sort of bring in Andy Warhol and, keep it going. But the other remaining ones, I believe, were Venus de Milo, which was a Salvatore Dali depiction of the Venus de Milo Pavilion, which was at the 3940 World's Fair. They all had interesting stories behind them, including the fact that the Venus de Milo Pavilion was supposed to be a living depiction of the Venus de Milo piece of art, and that had to include a bare-breasted woman who was a part of it, which had to be taken up with the state legislature to make sure it was not deemed pornographic, because 12-year-old children could go into the Venus de Milo and see a woman without a shirt on.
So what was the conclusion?
The conclusion was it was not pornographic. It was able to
art.
live. Yeah, it was art. So very, very interesting. And what do we have? Two more now.
Well, one of them is Robert Moses, right? And I
Right.
think the removal of that medallion might be the first time anybody's ever been sad about Robert Moses.
So losing Robert Moses, including me. So
yeah. The two other ones were the New York Hall of Science and Rocket Park medallion, and then another favorite figure from the fair, Elsie the cow.
Elsie, right.
A few of our Facebook comments were sad about Elsie the cow.
Elsie so what's the story of Elsie?
So Elsie was part of the Borden Dairy. Elsie's still part of the branding of Borden dairy products today. So basically it's that very cute, smiling female cow head. And she's got a little bell on her, I believe. Elsie was born because of the fair. So Borden had a pavilion at the 3940. They needed a way to get people into the pavilion because, quite honestly, who cares about a dairy, maybe? And so what they did is they created a living cow mascot, and Elsie was given her own home. So you could go into the pavilion and see Elsie in her living room. And I believe, if I remember correctly, and I'm sure somebody can correct me if this is wrong, she had a husband named Elmer. And Elmer was also depicted in the setting. And because of Elsie, that pavilion was one of the most popular pavilions at the 39 and 40 World's Fair. And so they brought Elsie back again for 64, 65. So she was one of the few repeat performances for both World's Fair. So much beloved, and they still use Elsie today.
How fun. So Nicole, you also spoke to Queens-based preservationist Michael Perlman, who's been behind many interesting efforts over the years, including saving old diners, preserving the original US Open, and the like. What did he have to say?
Yeah, so Michael's really passionate about preserving Queens history and was really into trying to save these medallions and also to track down some of the other medallions that were covered up before this removal. We're not exactly sure where those are. I've asked the Parks Department and I'm waiting to hear back from them about those. But in terms of the 5 that were just removed, Michael has reached out to as many contacts as he can just to kind of get the word out and try to find people who can help find a way to preserve these works of art, essentially. He had proposed kind of putting them in like a pan kind of structure so that they like are maintained and like can be stood upright rather than being displayed on the floor, and instead displaying them as like an art piece somewhere. So we'll see what comes of how they are preserved, if they are.
Do we know if the pieces have been kept slash preserved, that they can be put back together?
Yeah, I believe they have been. So, as Justin mentioned before, the reason they were removed, the parks department has said that they were a tripping hazard, a falling hazard in the park. There were tiles missing and like patchwork cement repairs. So, as far as I know from what they've told me, they've been removed and are looking to hopefully be preserved for the future and displayed potentially, maybe. We don't know.
Yeah. Michael Golden, I remember Nicole and I spoke to him on the phone last year, and he said that when they were putting the mosaics together, he sort of warned the park that if you do it a certain way, there is going to be deterioration. They're not going to last very long. And apparently the park did it. The parks did it, the way that he advised not to do it. So it was sort of a cautionary tale. And, here we are. But yes, I had heard similar, that the parks had them in storage and are looking for an alternative place to display them.
So all those World's Fair remnants that are still in Flushing Meadows-Corona Park, that it's such a part of the New York City skyline. Anyone who drives along the LIE or flies to LaGuardia knows exactly what structures those are. Are any others, in your opinions, at risk?
The one that also sort of saddened my heart in the past year and a half was the Column of Jerash, and the Column of Jerash is hidden. It's really was one of my favorite parts of the tour, because it's hidden in like a copse of trees near the Unisphere, and of course, everybody sort of gravitates to the Unisphere and the fountains in the center of the park. And if you just hang out left just a little bit, you would go where the Jordan Pavilion was, meaning the country of Jordan, from the 64-65 World's Fair. The young King Hussein of Jordan gave to New York City a column from the ancient Roman city of Jerash, and it is from AD 120. It Again, most Queens natives didn't know it's there, so I developed the tour with Flushing native Aaron Assis, our artist in residence at Untapped New York, and he considered that park his backyard, and he had no idea it was there until he went on the tour with me. And I always say to people, listen, this is something from AD 120 that you can go up and touch. And I used to encourage people to touch it because there's no fencing around it. It was right there. And then one day I was doing a tour, I believe it was maybe early spring, and I noticed that the capital of the column was missing completely. And I was literally heartbroken with the group. And so this is very interesting. I remember who the tour, it was a private tour for the Queensborough president. And the Queensborough president, Donovan, uh, was there. And I said, "Oh no, what's going on?" And he literally called somebody on the tour and found out that
Amazing.
it was vandalized. Somebody had
No.
actually, they don't know, but just got up there and toppled it. And so they did put a fencing around it. The bottom two pieces, the pedestal and the center piece of the column, are still there, but now it's all fenced up and it just doesn't have the same majesty it did on its own. Parks, from what I know, said they're not going to remove it, but they don't know if they can restore the top, because one of the things I asked the borough president was, I think they'll give you a straight answer about this more than they would give me. Are they planning on fixing it? And his response that he got was, it was shattered into many, many pieces. So a really sad story. And it just goes to show that, sometimes the teacher in me likes to say, sometimes we just can't have nice things. And
Yeah.
this is it. But
And I think the most visible part of the World's Fair is the New York State Pavilion, which is kind of regularly undergoing restoration work thanks to the work of local advocacy groups. So that's been exciting.
And actually, a new round of funding has come to the pavilion now. They finished or are in the process of finishing the electrification process of the pavilion. So what they were doing is, I believe it was 14 million, which was given to lighting the towers and the perimeter of the New York State Pavilion so it could be seen at night, because it was absolutely dark at night. And that was the beginning of a deeper preservation project. One of the issues with the pavilion is the lower ring, which was built onto literally creosote covered timber to firm up the marshy land that was a Flushing Meadows-Corona Park before it was a park were sinking. And so it became a hazard for the public to interact with that area. They are now looking to getting increasing funding to hopefully fix that and someday open it back up to the public because, Untapped New York had very, very amazing access to that for a while. And we're hoping we can
Yeah.
get
So I
back
think
again.
all three of us have been inside that pavilion. I think perhaps
Yes.
several times.
Yes.
And it's
The
incredible.
the first Untapped tour I ever did, I won
Oh, wow.
tickets
That's right.
to a tour inside the New York State Pavilion.
Oh, that's very cool.
Before I worked for
The
Untapped.
story of Nicole
My
being an
origin
insider
story.
and then becoming an integral member of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an incredible first year of the Untapped New York Insiders program. We had just out of this world programming and access, and Nicole takes that on now
Yeah.
to continue that tradition. So, any final thoughts about the World's Fair? Actually, I want to mention that I was deep into the World's Fair archives, which are at the New York Public Library and publicly accessible. That was research I did for my book, The Art Spy, because Rose Valland, my main character, actually worked on the World's Fair, getting sculptures for the French Pavilion. And Justin helped me look up information about the French Pavilion, which was epic. They were the first country to sign up for the World's Fair, so had the prime position along that. What is it called? The not Sea of Lagoons, but
It was the Lagoon of Nations. Yeah.
the Lagoon of Nations. So they
Yeah.
were the number one nation, and they focused on modern art. That was the main emphasis of the pavilion. So you would walk into that French pavilion and see the modern art of France. So really, really avant-garde stuff, representative of what was happening in France in the 1930s. And the World's Fair archives, as you've been, Justin, are just so rich. And I couldn't stop opening boxes there because every piece of even a press release was like a work of literary art.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always tell people who contact us to say, I'm researching the World's Fair for a project, or recently a woman from California has been trying to do a film about the World's Fair. And I said, go to the New York Public Library and prepare to be overwhelmed. Basically, like you said, anytime an invoice was generated for napkins, they have it. It's like
Yeah.
exactly how many snack stands there were and how many people they employed at all these. And the whole process for both, they were their own self-sustaining cities.
Yes.
They had electric, they had telephone. So it is an amazing place. And I always tell New Yorkers, don't overlook Flushing Meadows-Corona Park. It's an amazing part of New York City history. And
Yeah, that's how I
hope to-
discovered that Rose worked on it, and that even down to the details of where her boss was staying, which hotel, all those documents were there.
That's pretty amazing. That's great.
All right, great. Well,
Yeah,
this was fun. I feel like we should do this every week with the top story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? We've got it.
I just want to give a shout out to Gloria Nash, who did a virtual talk for Untapped New York Insiders about her book about the World's Fair and the remnants that still exist, looking back at the future. She gave us the tip on this, and the photos in her article are from her. So thanks to
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Gloria.
Yes.
Very cool.
Amazing. All right. Well, we'll see everyone next week.